This is a review. I'm finally getting around to doing a review of this watch. Now, before I start on this, let me have a disclaimer. This micro brand is out of my wheelhouse, which is, as you all know, is normally Seiko. Though this does have a Japanese movement in it, so it's a little better. But I don't know, I've just been wearing this watch and I formed opinions. But the point is, my opinions are my own, and that my research, as always, is somewhat peculiar and idiosyncratic and limited, which means I'm sure there's mistakes I'm going to make, and I'm sure there's details I'm going to miss. It's just pretty. I'm trying to find the best place to put this so you guys can see it. I'm having all these ridiculous glare problems. Isn't that better? No, I guess not. I need a real light that shows everything. Anyway, so let's start from the beginning. This is a watch company. I believe it's run by a husband and wife team in New York, and they're one of the few micro brands I can think of out of the bewildering array of them that have managed to get beyond the, help my Kickstarter area. There you go. You can kind of see the color there. So, I mean, you know about most of these Kickstarter things, and they're quartz watches with with extremely minimal, like Bauhausy kind of max sort of simplicity. I mean, just what is the name of that thing? It's see, this is where my lack of research comes in. Also, I'm being poked by a cat. In any case, in the last few years, Laurier, Kirsten, they've been quite successful, and they've stayed to a certain sort of aesthetic that works. And obviously that's why I'm here. So let's talk about the different elements of this watch. Okay, so first step, and again, I'm going to try to be careful, but I'm sure there's things I'm going to get wrong. The Hydra 2, they're out of stock now, but you could buy them directly from Laurier for Laurier? I don't know which it is. I'm just going to choose one and go with it. You could buy these for $4.99 off the site when they still have them. That's a pretty inexpensive watch these days. It really is. But it comes with a nice box, all kinds of nice layering inside, and they have some goody things. Obviously, there's the extra links. But they have this neato mosquito diddly thing. It really is sort of a master class for me. I mean, we're only working on our branding and promotional and extra stuff now. I mean, we've been doing this for 8 years. I mean, we might as well be operating out of a mom and pop stand up in the mountains making homemade hand-pulled taffy and pemmican. But they have this nice little leather or faux leather snappy thing, and it has a card. Now, it has a card signed by one of the people, and it was, it's nice. I mean, handwritten, that's awesome. It also has a little, it comes with a handy dandy little tool diddly thing, like a bracelet screwdriver down there. So, it was a nice first impression. Again, it's not super, it's like the watch, it's simple, clean, and utilitarian, which are things that I appreciate. Can't complain about that. Okay. So I was interested in the watch. I don't know, there's something about it that grabbed me. The balance of it, the simplicity of it. It looked right. But for sort of an overview, this is kind of like most other Kickstarter watches. By the way, if you hear that in the background, that's the dog snoring. Sorry, he's asleep, and he's snoring. This watch clearly was designed to speak about older watch trends, classic watch trends. One of the things that's unusual, you see it's got the double crown. For those of you who are not really familiar with this kind of a thing. In the 60s, there was a sort of a there was a moment when it was fashionable to have internal rotating bezels, and also by a second crown, but also to have offset double crowns as a sign of the watch being a super compressor. The idea being that the deeper down you take the watch, the more the pressure swooshes and squishes in, and the huge rubber caseback seal and the acrylic crystal would both deform under the pressure to actually seal the watch more tightly. So this looks like a super compressor, but it isn't one. The depth rating is 100 meters, which is, I don't know, I mean, Seiko classes that as splash resistant. I certainly wouldn't go swimming or surfing or anything with this. I mean, maybe it's, I don't know. I haven't taken it apart. I haven't looked at the seals. But that's the thing. So you've got a few 60s elements here. Double crown, super compressor, internal rotating ring. And let me show you some examples. Here is that is a 1969 Seiko JDM 6105. And I found myself actually grabbing this watch a lot when I was thinking about this watch. There were a few watches actually that I grabbed because of pieces that reminded me. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, there were a few watches here that I wanted to refer to when thinking about this watch. And it's kind of a reason I would think as I was going through this, why this watch works in my brain. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things. I'm sitting here trying to decide which element is important, and I'm starting to think that it might be all of them. So I'm just going to go for it. One of the things that sorry for the dust there. One of the things, the dial is so clean. The dial design is so clean. Again, it takes a lot of, hints from other watches. And by the way, I'm not going to say that this or that design element was taken from this or that watch. I'm just saying there's stylistic commonalities. So I've been wearing this one when I haven't been wearing this one. This is a 1969 Seiko Sport Diver. And I'm beginning to think that one of the reasons this watch grabbed me is because it reminded me of this. There are a few things that do this. First, you've got this one of the things I just am sort of weirdly crazy about is having sort of a two-tone thing. You've got this blue, this beautiful blue dial, the color of that blue dial is like, it's almost like a cobalt. There was a Volkswagen had a color like this in the 50s and the 60s. That I loved. I owned one Volkswagen that had that color. But you contrast it against the black of the indicator ring. And it provides a nice counterpoint. Salty and sweet at the same time. That's the same thing for this. It's one of the reasons I love it. The blue, if it's dark enough, depending on how the light is touching it, it can look blue and it can look black, which is awesome. Another thing that I very much like, and it's not just how the design elements are laid out, because they're very clean, but I swear this is one of the best things. This is a matte dial. I mean, a lot of these old watches are matte dials, but that means there's no metal framing around the markers. They're just applied directly to the dial. Darn it. Is that a scratch on my crystal? This came to me as a used watch, so don't worry about that. So what this is this has, and to demonstrate what I'm talking about, here, this is a Rolex Explorer. And this is what they call a matte dial. And you can see you've got the dial, and the lume is the dial. The lume are the markers. And it's this matte, finished, puffy looking tritium in this case, but it's a real classy look. And they did it here. What it is and what that does is it pulls back on some of the extra weird design elements, trying to make a watch look more flashy and baroque. This instead is much simpler. No frills and fancy stuff. Just clean, basic design. Bone white loom. I love it. I love it. I guess this will give us an opportunity to talk about that. Also, they used a minimum of colors and surface finishes. I love the contrast between the white loom and the silver printing. This is, by the way, speaking of matte dials and Rolexes, this right here, they used a Rolex type font here, like a Submariner type font, to show the, to have this in there. But it's so clean and the elements are balanced. 1, 2, 3, 1. I love that. Having the date at 19, I'm sorry, the date at 19, the date at 6 o'clock, I really like. And again, in sort of keeping with this really, this really clean and precise printing on the dial, they have a date window that's got a little bit of a bevel around it, which is awesome. And normally you wouldn't see it, except they put a very precise date window with that same matte silver. And it's just in a trapezoidal shape, and it just echoes everything else, and it's just so clean. And I applaud the idea of only having the section from 1 to 20 here marked out. The rest of it, if that whole thing was there, it would make it a little more cluttered, which you don't want. And so for me, I mean, the dial just really made it for me. I do have a quibble, but I'm going to address quibbles at the end. Okay. So the hands on these, the shape is, it's reminiscent of Omega. And Omega did this too, where it had this shape with the high polish. You see it on their reissues of the Speedmaster 53s or 57s or whatever the heck they were. Their Dauphine hands, it's got this little added arrow tippy thing there, which is nice. It makes it feel, if it didn't have this, honestly, the watch would be a little more boring. Having this extra arrow here makes it feel more tool-ish. Interestingly, they put it on the hour hand instead of the minute hand, because you would, knowing the time to minutes versus hours is more important if you're diving. So I'm not quite sure about that. It marks it to me as more of an aesthetic choice versus a functional one, but I still don't really mind it. The hands are high polish, and typical for these kind of things. The hand surfaces on the hour and minute hand are absolutely flat, which is awesome. Flat and clean, which I like. Sweep hands are harder to do, so they tend to be sort of more blobby topped versus being just absolutely flat topped. But I will admit I'm prejudiced because that's a Seiko thing, and I really like that. The only question I really had about the hands, it's the only thing that ever makes me go, I'm not sure. I mean, I like the hands, but this thing, like with Omega, when Omega did this used to bug me. Okay, there, you can see the hands. It looks beautiful, right? And then you flash like this, and because you have a dark dial and now dark hand surfaces, it's like they go away. You can still see them because of the loom, but it sort of changes the look of the thing. You have this big, beautiful, beautiful hand here, and just to see it go and go away is just a little odd to me. Now, I didn't design this watch. I'm not in charge of this watch. I didn't do anything, in my opinions, are my own. If this were me, I would have matched up, darn it, I would have matched up these hands to the silver printing, silver text, and all this other, prominent matte silver printing by making these hands matte finished. You can actually get a feeling for what it would look like. If they were matte finished, they would look more or less like this no matter what position you were in. And then you would always have that balance, and the matte finish would match the matte here. You can actually see what I'm talking about here with this really, again, this very early Seiko with this early and original handset, which you'll notice is matte. And no matter where you put it, the hands never change their appearance. You can always see them. And I just think that's a nice touch. I don't know why it is that so few companies use matte hands, but they don't. I've been considering going over these with a dull coat, which is I can do, and it's easily reversible, and it would make these matte. But I don't know if that's stupid, so I'm just going to leave it be. Case. Oh, anyway, in the cross-hatching on those crowns, that again, that's also a super compressor thing. They've been super compressors. Vintage ones have been getting real hot, but that's where this comes from. The case is elegant. I actually really like it. I really like the case. The manufacturing is good. They've got a nice combination of things. This combination of horizontal brushing with the high polish stripe. Horizontal brushing, high polish stripe here. This high polish stripe, it just lays it gives a nice border to the, and a break to the different planes of the watch. The surface milling, the sizes, I'm sorry, the surfaces, very precisely done. Sometimes you see watches, some of these micro brands, and the cases just are kind of banged out, but this one is nice. Again, circular brush bezel there. Very clean lines, which I like. I'm probably going to be saying that a lot. Pierced lugs, which is nice. I think that's pretty cool. That's another old school thing. And actually, I really, from a functional standpoint, I dig it. I love their iconography. Their approach is nice. This is the Lori symbol here, and it's just sorry for the squeaking, repeated all the way around. And it's nice because there's nothing on here. Usually people, companies are going to use this case back as a way to really push their advertising, push the information out that they need. But, like you look at an old Seiko, and you've got all this stuff on there. Even one like this you can still see all that worn away. You're not going to have to worry about this here. And like a Rolex, it's nearly sterile, which is good. I just think it's cool. One of the best elements, though, about the case that I really like are its dimensions. Dress watches, typically, they're sort of, I don't know, they're sort of chunky. Even a Rolex here has unusually long lugs for its time. But these days, most dress watches are pretty short. They don't have this high ratio of width to length. But this one does. These big, long, thin lugs, which I just love. They're really elegant, and they remind me, again, and I'm not saying there's a connection, that's just what it reminds me, of one of my favorite vintage Seiko models, this 6218. This is from 1965, and there are some things, some design pieces that just work. And this is one of them. The Seiko's a little different in that this is a bezel-less design, and this one has a bezel, but beyond that, you can see sort of the grammar of how these looked. But the long lugs, it makes it really elegant. It also helps to really emphasize how thin these Hydra 2s are. They use a Miyota 9015, which is crazy thin. It's like 8.3 millimeters, but it's automatic, 28.8 beats per hour, hacking, date change. It's a great movement. The Miyota 9015 is always sort of talked about as being comparable to the ETA 2824. And it's certainly good. And I have to say the numbers on this watch are fantastic. They are great. Just love it. So the case itself is actually, the watch does not stand very tall, relatively speaking. This is an old school Seiko movement, and with the crystal and everything, the watch, which is slim for a Seiko, still stands higher than this. A lot of these standard issue old school watches are, they're thicker. Like that's bigger and significantly heavier. It's just so elegant. Another choice I really do like. I like the fact that they used an acrylic. It has sort of a warm, nostalgic feeling to me. I mean, this Sago here, that's Hardlex. That's glass, and that's nice. That's nice. I mean, seriously, I like Hardlex. But there's something about an acrylic crystal that I'm really enjoying. And the nice thing about, they have this sort of warm strength to them. Nice thing about acrylic is they are hard to crack. And also, the nice thing is you can polish them. You get some flits or something like that, and I can polish the little marks out. No problem whatsoever. You scratch Hardlex or Sapphire, and whoop, you're out of luck. Yeah, I mean, I've really, more and more as time's gone by, I've really become fond of these domed acrylics. I just think that they're neat. Bracelet. I mean, you notice that I have the, if I can find it, where's the darn thing? I have it on this vintage strap. This is actually, I love this strap. This is like a 25 or 30 or more years old Spidel, marked as being made in West Germany. I don't know, I really like it. It's got these double stiffeners in there, and I just like it. But I had another, but we still have to talk about the bracelet, because this was an option you could get, is it came with the bracelet. Much like with the case, the bracelet is beautifully made. Here, I'll take that one off there. Tightly machined, solid stainless steel, brushed finishes. The surfaces are all clean. It's got the undercut so that it rotates over nicely. They're put together with cotter pins, which is absolute split pins, which is perfectly fine for me. They work great. I don't know why we need a more complicated system. The worst is Omega. Some of their bracelets, they have screws on each link on both sides. Little teeny tiny short screws. What a pain in the ass. You have to glue them all in. Hang on just one second. Before I put this bracelet on here, just want to go back to talking about case finishing again. There's a lot of attention to detail here. You would think in a watch that was designed with a bracelet that they wouldn't necessarily want to spring for the extra stuff to ensure that you have case finishing that's all the way between the lugs and running up inside the lugs. I mean, even Seiko back at this time they finished that stuff, but they didn't really think about it too much. This is something like what Rolex would do. They would have this vertical finishing and then put their serial numbers over it, top and bottom. So it was just a nice touch. And you can see now without the strap, just the simplicity and balance of those lugs. It just looks so nice. And with care, this watch, this case style will be good for a very, very long time. Very elegant. Okay, let's put the bracelet on. One thing about the bracelet it's got a few things. One, it's beautifully made. Solid stainless steel. But two, unusually, they decided to go with solid end pieces. I would say it's a kind of a risky choice unless you're really doing yourself right, because these things, the tolerances for these end links to be on here and not rattle, the tolerances have to be perfect. I mean, I've seen, local guys in our community who deal with, bracelets and stuff like that have solid end pieces, and there's just nothing but trouble. Jonathan Koch tried to do solid end links for the 6139 pokes, and it just was nightmarish. He could never get them right. Just pain in the butt. But if you do it right, they work, and you can see how clean and elegant that drops in and fits. Okay, let's put the bracelet on. There it is with the bracelet. They really did do a nice job. It's so, it has I'm a sucker for taper bracelets like this, and this really did grab me. There's a couple of different ways they could have approached the end links. They went to go with sort of the continuation of the pattern here with the sort of the fake inset right there to suggest another link. Yeah. But the finishing and the quality and the fit are just excellent. Really, really, really tight. The bracelet really does work, and it's so beautifully made. But One more quibble. This is the only other quibble, and one of the reasons why I'm not wearing it on the bracelet right now. Okay, so I've talked a lot about this elegance, the slim, long lugs, and just sort of the low height of it and everything. So we've got this beautiful bracelet, right? And it matches the thickness of its end pieces, and the basic, the central thickness of the lugs at their base. But if you look at the side, this is again. Oh, sorry for the giant. I have a blister from digging snow. Sorry about that. I'll try to not show you guys that. You don't need to see that. Okay, so you have, though, even though the inside of the watch case, this area inside the lugs matches this thickness, the outside of the case does not, because it necks down. So you have a visual caught by this brush, and then you have this case like being thicker over here, but it looks like you have a bracelet from another watch on, to me. If it were me, it's my only quibble, and it's a stupid quibble, and it's my opinion, and I am absolutely happy to be wrong. It's just my opinion. If it were me, I would have found a way to replicate this final width down here so it continues on, just like this angle continues on, to have this angle continue on. And there's a couple ways you can do it. Higher end Seiko JDM pieces will actually bevel off the bottom at an angle, so it's ergonomic, really. You do this at a 45 or to match this lower case piece here, or this upper stripe, and you get that so it pulls it up there on that side. On this one, you could in theory do the same thing. You could also take this end piece here and neck it down to be thinner, and then the entire bracelet itself could be thinner, and you could have this entire height be the height of this, so it continues on. So this would just neck down smaller, and then you'd have a lighter bracelet. Visually, it's beautiful. It adds a lot of weight to the watch. And to me, my thinking, it makes the watch feel a little clunkier than it looks because of the added weight. But again, that's a personal quibble. Can't complain about the bracelet's manufacturing quality, anything else. It's only an aesthetic thing, and it's only in my estimation. It's the only thing I would change. In fact, it would be nice, actually, if these were a little thinner. The bracelet was a little thinner, it'd be slightly lighter, and then you could match that up, and it'd be, I don't know, that's my only quibble. It is tremendously accurate. It's beautiful to look at. So here's sort of so I put this on, and this is my opinion. It's just my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right or not, but it is what it is. The watch, again, the watch head is so graceful. Yeah, it's only 39 millimeters of beautiful, perfect shape, and an excellent size. Like 39 is that new sweet spot for me. Like 39, 40, that's pretty much where it is, unless it's like a sport watch or something else. So you've got this graceful, restrained watch, but with this bracelet, again, that to me it just feels slightly too much, too big. The look of it is great. It just seems too bulky. But again, that's just my opinion. But you can, I guess when I look down at the side, I'm like, I can see the bracelet just looks like it's, I don't know, it makes it look bigger than big enough that I notice it. But then again, I may be prejudiced because I mostly deal with Seiko. So, but in this time, the 60s and the 70s, bracelets like this typically were quite thin. So it's, they sit closer to the wrist. They're still secure. You see, and it doesn't detract from the watch head, at least to me. I just think it's it's unobtrusive. I mean, the beauty of a bracelet is going to be from this side, from not this side. That's my opinion. So you wouldn't want the side to detract from the outside. But again, that's me. I'm a lot happier when the bracelet is thin, when the straps are thin, and when they hold tightly, and the watch head itself can shine. I mean, even, for a big rough and tumble, dive watch. This is a Seiko 7C43 7010 from 1988, and it's on its original Z-type bracelet. And this is, I mean, they're solid stainless steel with hollow middles. And so this is pretty burly for a bracelet, but you have that big watch head on this relatively thin bracelet, thinner than this one, I think, isn't it? Is it? Yeah, it's even thinner than this bracelet. So to me, that's why it feels a little unbalanced. Too fine of a head versus this. But when you put this big watch, that's a big old dive watch right there. But again, because the bracelet is, relatively thin and flat, it holds tightly to the, it holds smoothly and closely to the wrist, and it doesn't overshadow the watch head. That's nice. Imagine how the Laurier would look with a strap like that. With a matte Jubilee. That'd look pretty kick-ass. Imagine, too, if instead of having an inset end link like this, what if you had, you had an end link that behaved like a hooded lug, so all the way to here, but with something like that coming out of it. So you'd have this end link flat, you'd have the end of the case flat, apparently, and then have something like that in there. And if that was matte finished and brushed like everything else, man, that'd be pretty. So there you go, people behind Laurier watch. Kirsten, that's what I do. But again, that's just me, just my opinion. Yeah, I'll try this thing on a Z199 and see how it behaves. So in conclusion, I dig it. It's got a nice movement. It's accurate. 28.8. Pretty smooth sweep. It's not full-blown true high beat, but it's up there. Great case finishing. Excellent price point. A tasteful integration of a number of vintage elements that I really like. Very clean, restrained design that is not boring. It doesn't look like this sterile thing that dropped out of an AI design program. It has some warmth to it. It's worth well beyond what its price point is, if you ask me. I mean, this could get into one watch territory. If it had, real depth on it, more than 100 meters, if you had, say, a 200 meter, 300 meter, something like that, then, I mean, you could really sell this thing as being sort of a one watch deal if you didn't even have to worry about, its resistance. But the Hydra 2, it's a beautiful watch. They did a really nice job, and it's one that will last. I dig it. Okay, there it is, my half-baked review of the Laurier Hydra 2. Laurier? Anyway, it's a beauty. Okay.